Hello, folks. I'm Michael Turton, and this is Donovan Smith. And we are here again for another edition of Current Affairs Taiwan. Welcome back. A lot of stuff we got to talk about today. The KMT chairmanship election, which will certainly happen, apparently. The Han Kuo-yu has made an appearance at a Han rally. And a bunch of other stuff. The KMT party list, Hong Kong, and the spy thing. Breaking news as we started recording. I'm sure you've all heard about the spy story. The guy who turned himself into Australian intelligence, and he named an official in Hong Kong as the head of the spy operations there of China. And that guy just happened to be in Taiwan now, and as he was leaving the airport tonight, he was picked up by Taiwanese officials.
So that's breaking. We just got that.
Yeah, we just got that.
Right. Now we got it via Twitter, so
yeah.
So it has to be true.
Was it on the internet?
It was on the internet. Really?
Yeah.
So it's true.
Okay.
So, all right, so we lost some stuff because we lost our last show. It was actually a really good show. It was really funny. It was, I thought one of our best. But anyway, so we got lots to cover. So why don't we get started? Where do we want to start?
I came in there, walked in the door, and you said, "Hey, check this out! At a Han rally, Han Kuo-yu of the mayor of New Taipei City showed up."
Yeah. So okay, here's the context. Han Kuo-yu came out and has been now they campaigned together with Taichung Mayor Liu Xiuyan during the last election. The three of them were kind of like the Three Musketeers. They were in all the advertising outside of Taipei and Jinmen, all over the place. And they kind of really, along with Wang Jin-pyng, and they kind of locked down the election, sidelined Wu Den-yih. He was stuck up in Taipei with Ding Shizhong, who lost in Taipei. So now those three were tight, campaigning together, so great. Now, Han starts running for president, and guess what? Han Kuo-yu is openly, basically disgusted with him, saying things like, he's been asked to be the campaign chair for New Taipei City, which he's the mayor of. And he's like, I'm too busy being the newly elected mayor, being very, very obviously insulting toward Han Kuo-yu, the newly elected mayor of Kaohsiung. So there's that. So essentially, he's been getting very, he's been kind of slapping him around, and the party's been trying to bring Han Kuo-yu under control and get him to help campaign because he's probably the most powerful and popular figure nationally right now, Han Kuo-yu, New Taipei Mayor Han Kuo-yu. So he finally shows up at a campaign rally for Han Kuo-yu, but he shows up like an hour earlier. They don't share a stage. He clearly doesn't want to be seen visibly campaigning with him. He's doing everything he can to get out of it. Now, you had an interesting point, too.
Well, yeah, he shows up early. He's on the stage by himself. And I started to wonder, well, maybe he's testing, how does it feel to stand here? Can I really do this? Will the crowd respond to me? Will these people follow me? You have to remember that unlike Han Kuo-yu is Taiwanese.
Yeah.
And he's a former head of the national police. And he's hugely popular. He's competent. He's not been marred by any scandals. Corruption or otherwise.
I can think of possibly two.
Possibly two.
Yeah, one. He was part of the team that was raiding a nylon dung.
Oh, nylon dungs. That's right. Yeah.
And then when
I was thinking of more recent.
Nothing recent. In the 90s, he was in charge of the Chen Jingxing hostage with the South. Yeah, he was the cop in charge. And then the press got a hold of the phone number. This is when the South African military attaché, what was then the South African embassy that was about to leave, was kidnapped by this criminal and the cop in charge of trying to negotiate. Now, he was successful at the end of the day, more or less. There were some shootings, but nobody died. So he was successful in the end, but it wasn't flawless. But other than that, yeah.
But the DPP basically nixed all that when they asked him to run for them.
Yes.
So
yeah. So here's the thing: is what's interesting is all the people who don't want to appear on stage with him right now.
Yeah.
Eric Chu has been kind of tepidly, sometimes joining him, sometimes not. In Taichung, Han was campaigning at a whole bunch of events, and as one headline put it, Lu Xiaoyan didn't even show him her headlights or tail lights, because she would show up again at the rallies, but not at the same time.
So they wouldn't be on stage together.
They only showed up together on stage once at all the events, together.
Wow.
So she's kind of doing the same thing, but she at least showed up, at least did one appearance with him. Meanwhile, in Zhanghua, where Han Kuo-yu is also going, Wu Den-yih, same thing. He showed up at the rallies, but didn't show up at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So nobody wants to be splashed with the mud of Han's apparently upcoming loss.
Except for Johnny Chang. Jiang Qicun, the legislator here.
Well, he's kind of too junior to blow it off right now. Yeah. He's got to get some weight.
So do we want to go into Wu Den-yih here, or where do you want to go next?
We should talk about this because it looks like Han's going to lose. If the polls stay consistent, there's nothing out there that would make me think he's going to turn around a 10 to 20 point deficit. So assuming he loses, already last week, Xie Longjie down in Tainan, a KMT legislator, said he wasn't going to run for re-election. He was going to throw his hat into the ring for the KMT chairmanship position.
He's actually only a city councilor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But he's on the party list at number 15, one place after
Wu Den-yih himself.
Wu Den-yih himself.
Yeah. So anyway, he threw his hat into the ring last week, which is basically a signal saying the vultures were starting to circle. And sure enough, this week, there was stuff out in the newspapers. Who are the leading candidates?
Well, the news. Okay, this is speculation in the newspapers, and I saw on TV shows as well, both. And they use the same number, 5 potential candidates. Now, in theory, Wu Den-yih is the party chairman. His term will end, and I believe it's May of 2021.
Right.
However, they're going to get killed in the presidential election, and it's not looking good for them on the legislative election.
No.
My own estimates keep dropping because
they took another beating with the party list, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah. So essentially, Wu Den-yih, the tradition is that you step down after a major loss. So the pressure is going to be on for him to do so. Now, the difference between most elections and this one is the knives are already starting to come out, and the election isn't even done yet.
No.
That's how bad his chairmanship has been. And so the big candidates that we just take a look at a newspaper report. I saw some stuff on the TV. Hong Xiu-ju is one possibility.
Please make it Hong Xiu-ju.
This is the ex and potentially future chair. Another previous chair who may become chair again is Eric Chu or Zhu Lilun, who's also, both of those two were also the presidential nominees of the party last election. Hong Xiu-ju, the first one, and then she was replaced by Zhu Lilun, who was the chairman, and then he stepped down as chair later, and Hong Xiu-ju took over after him.
Right.
So we've got Lian Shengwen, Shan Lian, the son of Lian Zhan, the ex-vice president. Shan Lian is a princeling. Why don't you describe him?
He's a princeling. Well, they tried to give him New Taipei City.
They tried to give
him that.
I love the way you put it.
And he couldn't even win an election in the city which is a mainlander walk. So he was the one who first lost to Ko Wen-je way back 2 cycles ago.
Yeah.
So he's got his kids were Canadian citizens, and I guess his wife was too, and they had to give that up for him to.
For all the good it did him.
Yeah, so they parked him inside the party apparatus somewhere, as I recall.
Yeah,
I don't remember what his exact position was.
So then there's Hao Longbin, the ex-Taipei mayor. He's a potential candidate. He's currently a vice chair.
Right. Well, that was the other thing. After Ma left, he appointed like 6 vice chairs.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who might be angling for the chairmanship position. But on the other hand, who would want it in the wake of a loss like this?
Now, the other candidate potentially is Han Kuo-yu himself. These are the ones being bandied around.
It's hard. Well, Hong Xiu-ju became chairman after they blew that election. So.
Yeah. I mean, Hong Xiu-ju, I think, would be terrible.
Yes, please.
Sean Lin would be terrible for the KMT.
Yes, please. Give it
How Long Bin and Han Kuo-yu would also be terrible.
Oh, yes.
Now the other two, Hao Long-bin and Zhu Liluan or Eric Chu, they're both fairly competent people. I think they're not wildly incompetent, but they're not the people to revive the party and lead it to a bright new future. I just don't see it. I don't think either one of them are popular enough, dynamic enough. And Eric Chu had his chance, and he didn't do it.
No. So we were thinking maybe Ho Yo-lee. If he wants to run for president in the next election, he's got to start thinking like that.
Yep.
If it's going to be with the KMT.
Yeah. And that's another serious possibility.
Yeah.
If this election goes that badly, he's Taiwanese, and it's hard if you're Taiwanese and not deeply affiliated with certain mainland factions to become the chair. Yeah. It's not impossible.
Wu Den-yih did it.
Wu Den-yih did it, but then again, he was basically so deeply tied in with certain mainlander factions that he was considered, I think, for all intents and purposes, an honorary mainlander, really. Yeah.
Well, they're going to use him and discard him after this election, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So speaking of using and discarding, how about that KMT party list, huh?
Oh, that was brutal.
The DPP leaked some list, and they had an Aborigine at the head, and then they changed that, and it could have been a public relations disaster.
Yep.
And their list was very meh, but it was completely buried by this incredibly stupid KMT list.
Exactly.
We've been saying for years they have to Taiwanese. They have to become Taiwanese. They have to Taiwanize if they want to continue being a party here, and they just refuse. Once again, we got another list that was almost all male and almost all mainlanders.
And elderly.
And very elderly. And one of them, what's his name? Wu Sihuai, that's it, yes. He was a general who's been on the mainland singing the PRC national anthem.
In front of the president, Xi Jinping.
Yes. And apparently he gave lectures. He had given given a press interview where he tells the PRC how to defeat the U.S. in a war.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
And so if he's fourth on the list, which means he'll undoubtedly get in.
Yep.
And as a legislator, he would have access to classified and privileged information.
Yep. Now, he, of course, denies that he is tied in with China and all of this. He says very loyal to the Republic of China, and we can really only hope. I mean, if he's going to be in the legislature, which looks almost dead certain.
But go ahead. But
yeah, there were some other ones as well who were controversial.
But
Yulan, who was originally number 1, is now number 2. Who is the police university professor who's come out strongly in defense of the police in Hong Kong, for example. He's number 2 on the party list, so he's going to be in.
Well, but the important thing was this list was a huge. The KMT took a huge hit in popularity because of this list, and they were criticized by within their party. And
everyone.
What did the vice presidential candidate of Han Kuo-yu say? Simon Chang, twice now.
Yeah, twice now. So he first came out. So this is Simon Chang. This is Zhang Shanzhang, the vice presidential nominee from the KMT. Same party. His comment initially on the party list was, we can't support this. And if you don't support it, then go ahead and vote for the PFP or even the TPP, just not the DPP. So then the party tries to get him to shut up, and he doubles down on Facebook and says, look, we can't support this. Vote your conscience. And he said, it's not that that we don't appeal to the youth. It's not that our policies are not popular. It's the party list. He's basically blaming their upcoming loss entirely on this party list. So right now there's a lot of scapegoating going on.
Yeah. So.
And by the way, just quickly, Eric Chu came out against it. Hao Long-bin came out against it.
A lot of young
Basically,
people.
everyone came out against it. It's like the list of major KMT figures who didn't come out against it, I think, would be shorter than the list of people
That's probably
who did.
true. But it's completely tone-deaf list and one that does not look towards the future.
Yep.
It's very sad.
And do we want to go on Wu Den-yih's comments on it?
Oh, God. Well, Wu defended it. Let's just leave it at that.
Just I'm sorry, it's too funny.
Okay.
At first he comes out, party list comes out. It's a disaster. It includes Choi, because we talked about this last week.
Yeah.
And he is now the number one on the new party, who's very, very pro-China. This guy's very, very pro-China.
The new party was the people who left the KMT in the 90s because they weren't pure enough.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, the party list comes out. Wu Den-yih comes out and says, I don't have to apologize for this. It's great. A few hours later, he has to back down. They go through the list, and only one guy was removed of it, who was actually accused of treason, although he was acquitted of it, was voted out of the party list. So now Wu Den-yih just came out and started with his whole woe is me routine. So he started distancing himself from Han Kuo-yu, who he bent the rules of the primary, bent over backwards, screwed everyone else in the primary over to change the rules to suit Han's needs and whims to get him to run for president so he could outmaneuver Wang Jin-pyng. Now he's trying to put some distance between him and Han, but of course Wu Den-yih was the one who got him to run.
Yeah.
Han was resisting running for president because I think he knew he wasn't ready for it.
No.
Wu Den-yih basically did everything he could to force him into it. So now Wu Den-yih is trying to distance himself from him. He's also come out and said, "I have to silently bear the disappointments and pressure of being the KMT chair, which in its history is, how did we say, like the worst 2 years in the KMT's history or something like this." And he went on.
Nothing compared to losing China.
And it was something, I forget the exact phrasing of it. But he went on to say, that how misunderstood he was. He felt that he was getting no joy from this job, and he feels that the fate of the ROC is in peril, and the DPP has been abusing its power to destroy them. Basically, read between the lines. And he said, people just don't, people just don't understand. And they're blaming me for things like the party list.
Oh, jeez. What did he also say? The chairman of the party has traditionally been the presidential candidate.
Yes.
Oh.
And that's why he said he originally wanted to be number 8 on the party list, which would have been very safe.
Yeah.
Then he was pushed down to number 10, and there's still outcry. That was moderately safe. And now he's at number 14. I don't think he's going to get into the legislature. No.
So let's see.
Yeah.
And then Wang Jin-pyng was talking about Wu, and what did he say? The election was odd, and the primary was odd.
Yeah.
And everything is odd, and these oddities are.
What was the phrasing?
Anyway,
yeah.
What he said was, and then the interviewer, he's giving an interview with the Liberty Times, and then the Liberty Times said, "You're being so polite," and sometimes he said, "Well, sometimes politeness is the strongest criticism."
Yes.
Wang's so great.
Yeah. It was he finds ways of eviscerating a thing. He puts his finger right on it. He says something that sounds so mild, but if you give it the slightest bit of thought, he's driven a spike right through it.
Yeah.
He's so good at it.
So basically no one is happy with Wu.
Yeah.
And he's doomed. But
and Wang Jin-pyng, by the way, he came out and said he was asked again if he'd campaign for Han Kuo-yu, and he basically said, "We don't have anything, no thinking or ideology in common."
Well, remember, Wang Jin-pyng is from Kaohsiung. He's the powerful legislator, former speaker of the legislature, who was the unofficial head of the Taiwanese inside the KMT, and it was Wang whose factions put Han where he is in Kaohsiung. Well, one of the factors, anyway.
Here was something really interesting he said. one thing he commented is that he said in an earlier article, not that one, but he was asked about, so why aren't you supporting something along the lines of why aren't you supporting giving your support to or for Han Kuo-yu or any of the presidential candidates? Why haven't you endorsed any of them? And he basically said something along the lines of, he said, look, I haven't stopped my supporters from supporting him. I don't see what else I need to do for him. It was like, he was basically saying, so I let my followers support him, so you'd better thank me. Because this could have been a lot worse for you, pal. That was essentially the message, yeah.
Well, there was a fantastic thing. Another great thing this week was the fantastic article in The Australian by Natasha Kassam and Richard McGregor.
Yeah.
And if you can find it,
The Australian.
The Australian, yes. What was the title?
Something about Taiwan next Hong Kong. Something like that. I didn't actually like
Taiwan
the headline.
next Hong Kong. I didn't like that either. But
yeah,
I doubt they picked it.
No, usually that's the editor that picks that. But the article was really good.
Yeah, unusually well informed and almost free of the usual errors that one.
It was free of all the usual errors. That was nice. Got a few things right that very few people get.
Big news out of Hong Kong too.
Yeah.
The pro-democracy side killed it in the elections. But remember, those are for districts, and those are first past the post. Someone explained this on Twitter. And the legislative round is proportional, so you won't see a repeat of this huge sweep.
No, yeah. Well, the Legislative Council, LegCo, is really the legislature.
Right.
And that is elected through a variety of constituencies, some of which are quite small. In other words, they're like certain professions, like people in this profession. And so essentially they're easily manipulated by or bought out by Beijing, a lot of these individual constituencies. Then they have some broader, they have some that are elected through a much broader, larger segment of the population, which is harder for them to control. But all intents and purposes is that the way it's structured is that Beijing pretty much is almost guaranteed a majority in the legislature. However, this election that just happened, now they don't have much power, and it's the district level, but the equivalent of a local elections for your small area. But it was symbolically huge because it was open to the public.
Yeah,
it was a universal vote, high voter turnout. Majority came out for the pro-democracy.
It's already resonated here. Tsai Ing-wen was, congratulating the people of Hong Kong. And even the KMT came out with a statement. The English statement omitted in Chinese, there's a statement in there attacking the DPP on the 1992 consensus, apparently, which is omitted in their English text of their congratulations to Hong Kong. But I think it's important that the KMT has to publicly congratulate the pro-democracy side. Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of... people are way, way overestimating the effect of Hong Kong on Taiwan. Lev Nachman has a really nice piece in, what was that, Taiwan Insight last week on that? Yeah. And we've been saying it on the show and elsewhere, don't overestimate that. It's not that big. The problems of the KMT are due to their domestic issues, particularly the fact that Han Kuo-yu of the KMT is not a good candidate.
Yeah, I think to add a little bit to that, is I don't think it's not that it's not important. It's that it's not the prime determinant. In other words, as Lev's article showed, is that Tsai's popularity, her approval and Han's drop, there's no strong correlation between what's going on in Hong Kong. In other words, Han is largely doing it to himself. Yeah. However, I do think that it is relevant in what in the sense that I think it's helping Tsai Ing-wen, and it's also helping with the legislative elections in the sense that it's not changing the debate itself. When you run national elections, not local ones here, but national ones, particularly for the president, There's what Nathan Batter calls the China cleavage, which I like that term just because it has cleavage in it. Anyway, but basically it's that, pro-Taiwan, Chinese identity, or pro-China, or pro-better relations with China versus more localization, etc. Anyway, that main debate is not changed in the sense that it's that's a main fundamental element of the presidential election. I think what Hong Kong has done is it's sharpened the debate. In other words, it's made it more easy for those who prefer localization to keep Taiwan's sovereignty, to keep Taiwan independent of China and not move closer to China. It's much easier for them to say, look, we told you so.
Yeah.
And I think that it helps sharpen their argument. I don't think that it's changed the nature of the argument.
No.
It's sharpened it, though.
Yeah.
For one side.
Sure. So we don't have a whole lot more.
Okay.
I did want to mention that there's propaganda running around about the Hong Kong elections that Taiwan is orchestrating a lot of that. That's really not aimed at.
No.
That's really not aimed at Hong Kong or Taiwan or at the international media. That's Beijing propaganda aimed at its domestic audiences.
Yeah, they've also been touting that the CIA is behind it, that the Americans are behind it, the British are behind it, the West in general is behind it, and Tsai Ing-wen personally is behind it.
Yes, she takes time out from her busy schedule to oversee intervention in Hong Kong.
They smuggle her in. She puts on the mask, Yeah, she was there storming the LegCo, Yeah.
Oh my.
But that's for Chinese domestic audiences, because they really want to distract from the whole idea that people in Hong Kong genuinely oppose the Chinese Communist Party government in Beijing.
Right.
And so they're trying to make it like it's a cobble of a bunch of hardcore radical independent supporters, which is not true. Most of them in Hong Kong, they just want autonomy.
Yeah.
They just want democracy and autonomy. They don't want to be independent. Some do, but the majority don't. It's that cobble, and then mixed in with the foreigners and the CIA and Tsai Ing-wen,
Sure. Well, one of the things that's been sort of tracking the Hong Kong effect is the growing economic confidence.
Mm-hmm.
The economy's, salaries have creeped up a little.
A little, yeah.
And Cathay Financial came out today saying that consumer confidence is going up.
Mm-hmm.
People expect the economy to do well,
mm-hmm.
and that will be reflected in the voting for Tsai Ing-wen. Fundamentals are also lining up in Tsai's favor right now.
Yeah.
We could get a recession, but it won't happen now, probably until after Christmas.
No,
Too late to affect we could get a recession in the U.S., but it won't happen for a while.
Now, something that the KMT has brought up and is that they said that there's all these companies now, 70 something and 700 or 800 billion NT, I believe, have been pledged in. And unfortunately, the way they phrased it is to come back to Taiwan. And this is where this has kind of come back to haunt the DPP, because the KMT has pointed out that there's no money being brought in from China. Nothing. Nada. And the reason for that is that money leaving China gets taxed, and then when it comes into Taiwan, it gets taxed again. So there's double taxation. Now, but the thing is that was really kind of the DPP kind of phrased it wrong, because really what's happening is that most of those, these kind of MOU deals, it's never 100%, but a good chunk of that money will come in and is coming in. However, it's not necessarily coming directly from China. In other words, these companies are bringing it from other places overseas to it for taxation reasons, or they already have the money in Taiwan and are investing it.
Right.
So essentially, this is money that's been pledged to expand their manufacturing and business base here in Taiwan rather than in China or in other locations.
Yay.
In some cases, what it may mean is that maybe physically the money isn't coming directly from China. It's coming either from their local profits or from other overseas sources for taxation reasons. But they're not putting it into other markets. They're bringing that investment back here to Taiwan. They're bringing those jobs back here to Taiwan. They're bringing that production back here to Taiwan. And they may be bringing back people who are employed overseas back from Taiwan. Whether they physically bring the money from China, because it's hard to get money out of China.
Yeah.
Whether it comes directly in that route or not, it may not. But the fact of the matter is that they're directing investment here from whatever financial sources they choose to use. That's the fundamental thing there.
And as long as that money is coming in, the factories are coming in, so on and so on.
Yeah.
The economy isn't going to tank for the next, we only have 6 weeks, 7 weeks now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, folks, I think we're done. I, for one, am at the tail end of an 8-hour teaching day, 8 straight brutal. Hours, and I'm a wreck. I have to check my ID to make sure I remember my name. So,
ladies and gentlemen, this is Michael Turton.
Thank you, because I forgot. All right, guys, you be well. Take care.